Temetrius Jamel Morant, or Ja, as you likely know him, is a 6'3", 175-pound lead guard from Dalzell, South Carolina, with fluid cat-like athleticism and a knack for creating opportunities. Every single time I say his name, I think of the matchmaker lady from Mulan, and I say his name in that voice.
Mulan.
Ja Morant. Ja was a very lightly recruited player out of high school. He was a zero-star player with only 2 college offers going into his senior year, and he eventually signed with Matt McMahon and the Murray State Racers. Morant's eye-popping athleticism has been the most popular aspect of his game. We've all seen the highlights over and over on Twitter, on SportsCenter, on Instagram. But as the story goes, he didn't cleanly dunk a basketball until he was a senior in high school. So we're talking about a guy who has bloomed late athletically. Ja's the type of guy that you have to keep an eye on because he can explode vertically and unleash the spectacular at any moment. He supposedly has a 6'7" wingspan and a 44-inch vertical leap. To my knowledge, we've yet to see those measurements confirmed in a combine setting, but just watching him, I believe it. Morant's first jump is very quick, and he leverages that athleticism really well around the rim with his ball control, leading me to believe that he's got reasonably big hands. I'm very pro big hands, as some people know. Yeah, that got creepy. With a head of steam, he can absolutely posterize guys that are slow to rotate. But Morant is a slightly built guy that would typically prefer to slither between the seams and avoid getting obliterated if he can. He's strong with either hand when he's finishing, and he's got great elasticity in the air. I said cat-like in the intro, and I think that describes it as well as anything. He's an effortless athlete. He'll lie in waiting until he sees a vulnerable moment and then explode. He contorts and wiggles through tight spaces without much of an issue physically, and he uses his quickness expertly, changing speeds and angles until he gets the one he wants, and then he attacks. Dialing in the comparisons for Morant is a tricky thing because he's not totally similar to any one player. I've repeatedly heard people invoke the name of Westbrook, but I'm not as inclined to make that comparison myself. He's not as broad-shouldered or as overpowering, and I don't think that he has the same top-end speed as Westbrook or someone like De'Aaron Fox. As a playmaker, he stirs reminders of the lefty-righty passing of Trae Young, but Trae is miles and miles ahead of him as a shooter, and his handle is probably just a tad more polished. Offensively, I'm reminded a great deal of Rajon Rondo. Morant is a bigger guard, and he's a better and more willing shooter, and he also doesn't revel in being an off-ball defensive disruptor in the same way that Rajon did. But the layup making, the vertical pop in his finishes, and the advanced sense of playmaking angles all stir up memories of Rondo at Kentucky and his formative years with the Celtics. People very often forget that Rondo had some serious bounce in his early to mid-20s. These are all high-outcome players, but on the spectrum of athletically gifted point guards, Morant is carving out a notch for himself.
This is you, right here.
It's becoming less and less of a secret, but the highlights and the face-melting dunks are a distraction from the real tale of the tape. Ja is a very savvy, skilled, and intelligent playmaker. He's what I call a high-bandwidth offensive player. His ball skills are high enough to allow him to withstand a lot of pressure and still untangle complex problems in real time. He never looks hurried with the ball. His live dribble is fluid and typically really steady, although he can get a little cute sometimes and become audacious with his ideas. As a passer, Morant has well above average command of what pass is appropriate, where it needs to land, and how much velocity to put behind it. He does it all. Laser hook passes through interior seams with either hand, perfectly floated skip passes to shooters, well-timed dump-offs, darts thrown between the trees in transition. He is easily the best passer in the 2019 NBA draft. Players get going and into their rhythm in a variety of ways. I get the sense that Morant would be totally content barely scoring. That's how much he seems to enjoy the chess game of playmaking. More importantly, though, is the fact that he seems attuned to the moments where he should take over a game and seek his own offense. I've never once gotten the sense that Ja is stubbornly waiting for his chance to score. Morant is a competent 3-level pick-and-roll player at the college level. His ability to turn the corner with either hand on the screener's defender and score is a tool that he is constantly threatening to use, and if he can pull that help defender out of the corner and into the lane, he will. Ja is also like Trae Young in the fact that he throws a lot of paint on the canvas. Because he rarely takes a break from Murray and he almost always has the ball in his hands, his production comes with plenty of what I would call tolerable turnovers. According to Synergy, he's operating as a pick-and-roll ball handler 30.4% of the time and turning it over on nearly a fifth of those possessions. He's also second in the country in turnovers. To be totally honest, and this is something that we'll get into more in a moment, Morant is such an advanced passer for his level of competition that he often looks bored. As much of a fan as I am of Murray's personnel, Darnell Coward in particular, plugging Morant's vision and playmaking DNA into a system with higher quality athletes and finishers could greatly expand his offensive impact. Shooting is going to be a pain point in the discussion of Morant's ceiling as a player, but it could be much, much worse. Yes, his shot is strange. His shot pocket sits in front of his face, and the separation between his offhand and his shooting hand is murky. There's a lot of left hand involvement in his release, particularly with his thumb. You can also see that his elbows tend to point outward and they seem to move at the same time, revealing that lack of separation of hands. It resembles the jump shot of some old towny dude that's played in wind pants at your local park for years and inexplicably shoots 70% from three. There's one in every town in America, but I digress. Though there are concerns, there are still reasons for optimism. Morant's issues are not in his arms or in the way that he transfers energy through his body. And although he's not at all afraid to use his jumper as a pressure release within the offense, he doesn't appear to be under the impression that he's Dame Lillard. He goes to his jumper when it's necessary, and it's not the type of shot that is so ugly that you cover your head or you wear a helmet. There's flicky, soft motion in his wrist, and it's fairly mobile, bizarre as it is. He shot 34% from three this past season. For the time being, though, NBA defenses will likely beg him to take that shot if he doesn't continue to develop it. Ja is capable as a scorer, but despite his output, he failed to be an exceedingly efficient one in college. Morant's highest efficiency rating was simply around the rim, registering in the 58th percentile, scoring on 97 of 172 attempts. Will improved gravity and improved teammates improve the quality of his looks and subsequently his efficiency? It's possible, but it's also possible that Morant hovers in the I can score, but I'm not really looking to identity throughout his NBA career, a la Rondo or Ricky Rubio. Because Ja plays in the OVC on a team that heavily depends on his production, it's difficult to know how much of his defensive effort is tangled up in how crucial an offensive player he is for Murray State. It's like watching a star player on his high school team. Morant leads the country in assists at 10 per game, and in points produced at 27.8. Taking him out of their lineup would be like taking a brain out of a body. It's still a body, but it's not going anywhere. That said, on defense, Morant can often look like a semi-interested kid stuck in right field of a t-ball game. Positionally, he will get all kinds of turned around and wander into out-of-area situations where you wonder what he's even looking at. He gives ho-hum effort when he's getting screened and misidentifies his assignments in transition. He is very prone to turning it on and turning it off. Ja Morant is a gamer. He's a born competitor. In both of the OVC tournament games that I saw live, there were clear moments within each game where the deferring and the delegating had to stop, and Ja had to exert his star power. In both of those moments, he showed up on both sides of the ball. This alone made me wonder if he'd been sandbagging me a bit on defense. He clearly has another gear that he can shift into when it's winning time, and that was nice to see. 95% of the time, Morant is cool as a cucumber. Nothing seems to faze him, and Morant's flair and joy on the floor seem to inspire a good kind of cult of personality. His teammates burn a lot of calories away from the ball because they know that their work will be rewarded. If you follow this channel at all, you likely know that I love that quality in players. But does that mean that Ja Morant is a star at the next level? Can he be the brain of an NBA team? Every draft is different. In the 2018 draft, there were 7 guys that I saw as potential all-stars, and you could possibly talk me into a couple more. That's a lot. In the 2019 draft, there might be 4 if things go really well. I don't see Ja Morant ever carrying the offensive load for a competitive NBA team. I'm also not convinced that he's an all-star level player, but don't take that as a dismissal. Can he function without dominating the ball, be a defensive zero, remain a spotty shooter all at the same time, and still maintain a positive impact? These are the big unanswerable questions for the moment. My gut says that Morant could be a high-value player in the NBA, but it's a tenuous idea. Altogether, though, I would be very, very surprised if Morant is a bust. He's just too skilled. In the projected top 10, I see Morant making a lot of sense for Phoenix, Chicago, or New York. Now, that said, every single one of those teams would and should take Zion if they win the lottery. We're not discussing this. Zion is number one. But if they find themselves with the second pick, I wouldn't be surprised one bit to see Ja Morant as the second player to walk onto the podium and shake hands with Adam Silver on June 20th. Let me know if you agree. Hey folks, I appreciate you watching, and if you like this video, click the like button and be sure to subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter at JKyleMann. Say hey!